Jessica says her once successful and responsible Uncle Ed had a long-standing career in the aerospace industry, but lost everything 6 months ago. In fact, Ed left his home, his marriage, his children, and his job, and began street performing and preaching as Cowboy Tig. He has since been arrested 7 times, destroyed his credit, gotten multiple tattoos, and moved across the country, where he now spends his time high and drunk, floating in a motel pool. Now, Ed's sister Dawn, niece Jessica, and brother-in-law Bill all say Ed suddenly snapped last year, and no one understood what was happening.
My brother Ed has always been such an outstanding citizen, very responsible, and last year he just snapped.
My uncle had walked away from his family, his kids, his job, everything he'd worked for.
Yippee-ki-yay, y'all.
Ed's a very intelligent person. He was revered in his profession. A lot of people who respected him.
2 years ago, my brother had neck surgery, and when he woke, he had a paralyzed right arm, which resulted in being prescribed medical marijuana.
Once he had started smoking weed, he could not control his thoughts.
And it totally altered his personality.
I've been holding it in too long, and I didn't have a voice, and all of a sudden I feel like I got one and I don't want to waste it.
My brother had several alternate personalities.
Tig was one of them.
Don't count out Tig just yet. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Yeah! Tigers are wonderful things.
He wanted to be a street dancer.
He would dress up in a cowboy hat, a vest, cowboy boots.
And he seemed so comfortable in that persona, but that wasn't the real Ed.
After his breakup with his wife, he moved in with his parents.
He became very angry and lashing out and blaming my mom for everything.
There would be times where he would be crying and hitting the floor and upset, and then a minute or so later, he would be back to his excited, euphoric stage.
At the height of my uncle's mania, I was worried if he didn't get the help he needed that he was gonna die.
He spends his days floating around in a pool in Nevada, and he needs to rebuild his relationships with his family, his children, and his friends.
Well, Ed's stepfather, Charles, says he remembers exactly what happened the weekend that Ed's mania begun.
I believe that Ed's mania was brought on by his excessive alcohol, his failed marriage, and the intense pressure of his job. The triggering point of the mania was over a 3-day period. When Ed left his wife, he came home. He was very distraught, very out of place. We really weren't prepared for what we were witnessing. The first night, he wanted to reside in my office above the garage. My wife wanted him to stay in the house where she could keep an eye on him. The second day, he was having a manic episode, and we were in the car. He made claims that he wanted to punch her, that he felt like he could strangle her. Following day, he confronted his mother, blamed his problems all on her. She stifled them by being overly protective. A few months later, Ed came to the house, very manic, dressed in his cowboy attire, very threatening towards the family. He said that he was there to fight. He then said that if I ever came to Nevada, I would be taken care of the way men take care of problems out there. And he pointed his finger and pulled the trigger. The police were called and they arrested him. I am willing to forego any future I have with him to ensure that he receives the healing that he so desperately needs. This is it. He's my boy.
Well, Charles, we don't want that to happen. We don't want you to forego any relationship with him, but I understand what you're saying. You would sacrifice whatever necessary for his good, is what you mean, correct?
Yes, sir.
What do you think's going on with your son?
We were unaware of his alcohol use. He hid it very well because I believe he did not want to hurt the image, that his
You-
mother had of him.
You say he hit it well because he's been a very functional individual, right?
Yes.
Like he had a career in the aerospace industry.
Yes.
He was a flight controller,
Yeah.
so big responsibility. And during this time that he was functioning as a flight controller, was he a functioning alcoholic? Is
Highly
that
functioning alcoholic is what we refer to him as.
okay?
He considered himself a highly functioning alcoholic.
Okay, but with this going on, is there a history in the family of mental illness?
Yes, there is. And when this first happened, my fear was that something was coming out that was schizophrenia type illness.
So you say he snapped about a year ago.
He thought he was a messenger and that aliens were sending him signals. And then it went from that to he thought he was getting messages from God like John the Baptist, and that's what started some of the street preaching and the baptizing of Bill with a water bottle and himself.
He mentioned to me that he was the Messiah, and then John the Baptist, and that's when he baptized me with a bottle of water.
What we believe happened is once he started smoking that medical marijuana, it was about a month later that we say he snapped. It's almost like it brought out an underlying mental illness in him.
He says that when he's in these personas, one is Cowboy Tig, right? And one is this street preacher, and those kind of overlap some. And there's some basis for these. They just didn't just come out of nowhere, right? There's some part of his personality, underlying personality, that's tied to these, right? This is just sort of a
We never saw it before now.
amplification of those.
That's correct. When he was a young man.
He wanted to be a youth minister.
That's right. He wanted to be a youth minister.
So
which
now
is
he's a street preacher.
correct.
Okay.
Now the cowboy piece we don't
Yeah,
understand
the
really.
cowboy thing I don't get. Do you?
It came out of nowhere, and I think it happened when he was in Nevada.
But he also, when he was younger, because he loves to dance, he went to a local country western club where he would line dance. They invited him to be a member of their dance troupe.
So there's some basis, there's some hook for a lot of these things in his history,
Correct.
but they're now just amplified in this manic state.
We think it was always on the surface, and now we realize that.
Okay.
It was
All right.
Maybe always there.
Well, Ed says that his mania, and he refers to it as his mania, it's not like he doesn't get what's going on, but he says that when he's in this manic state, it makes him feel physically superior. He has a sense of freedom about it. He feels like this is like who he's supposed to be, so he feels kind of safe there. Now, this is not entirely unusual. This is kind of an escape for a lot of people when they go into this mode. It escapes the realities, it escapes the tensions, the pain, the problems of the real world. So yeah, it's like taking a vacation in your mind. We're going to find out how he feels today because we're going to meet him next, and I'm going to ask him about these things.
I had stresses from the job that led to me to step away from my career. I was a street preacher. Part of the way I used to get attention as a street minister is that I used to dance.
And later, you've not seen your stepfather since March.
I already grieved the loss of my mother and stepfather.
Well, are you saying you've written him off?
Ed had several alter egos. He started with John the Baptist, went to Captain Truth with an Irish tattoo about truthfulness.
That is the Scottish symbol for truth.
He went to Tigger.
This is Tigger.
When he was in Las Vegas, I believe, being manic, one of the patrons told him that he's acting like Tigger from Winnie the Pooh.
When he is Tig, that's the mind of a maniac, but in his mind, it's a positive thing.
Then he turned into a cowboy, which seems to be the favorite.
When Ed is Cowboy Ed, he's got his cowboy hat on, his belt buckle, his cowboy boots, and he feels so comfortable in that persona.
Ed says his parents are dead to him after they betrayed him. that's his words, and turned their backs on him during his time of need.
Life on the road's been really difficult. Been kicked out of a lot of places. My manic behavior has been interpreted as being either drunk or high, and I'm often asked to leave. My parents' refusal to offer me the help that I was asking for during what was the biggest crisis of my life ended with me out here in Nevada. I typically smoke about 4 times a day. It helps enhance my creativity. Well, I was arrested several times for DUI, for battery, even though I didn't lay a finger on anybody. My manic behavior would single me out and draw my attention, law enforcement. I was living off of my savings. I had no means to support myself. So for a time, I was a street preacher, and I was basically living off of the proceeds and the kindness of strangers. Part of the way I used to get attention as a street minister is that I used to dance. People would give me donations of money, food, sometimes marijuana. I kind of hit my financial rock bottom. I didn't feel like I was getting the support that I needed at home. I had stresses from the job, and unhappy home life led to me to step away from my career for a while. I left my wife and children. I went to my parents' house with the expectation that they would take me in, but they were so smothering and overbearing. I felt like all the pressure in my life was like a champagne bottle that had been shaken up until the cork finally popped. My parents triggered a nervous breakdown.
Well, Ed, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Phil.
Tell me about your career. You were in the aerospace industry?
That's correct.
And you were a controller?
Flight controller. So if you saw a movie like Apollo 13, I would be the guys with the headsets on. Just no astronauts on the other end of the line, just a spacecraft.
And then you just walked away from it, right?
I did. What I left over concerns for my health. After a surgery back in 2019, an anterior cervical vertebrectomy, I had 3 vertebrae removed. And in the ensuing months, I started rapidly losing weight, about 50 pounds. I had lost at the time that I ended up leaving. So my walking away from the career was more to do with my health reasons. But ultimately, it was determined that because of my psychiatric troubles, that was ultimately why, or how they filed for disability for me.
Are you mentally ill?
Absolutely.
What do you think is wrong with you?
Well, I've been diagnosed with bipolar.
You believe that's right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I definitely, well, I was dysthymic for pretty much my whole life, so depression was something that I was used to. Manic was something brand new for me. I had never had that, like, euphoria and impulsiveness and recklessness and things like that I experienced during the manic phase.
Okay, and would you say that you've had manic episodes where you were really agitated, highly energetic, and sometimes even kind of having a difficult time separating fantasy from reality?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was about a 7-month span of time that, yeah, my mind was just working on thinking on many levels at once, thinking very fast. Yeah, and just inability to, govern my speech and to the decorum of social situations.
And on bipolar, if it goes from depression to mania, where would you be on that curve right now?
And the depression side.
So are you depressed right now?
Yeah.
You at one point thought you were the Messiah.
I thought I had a message from God, yeah.
And you probably don't think now that you are the chosen Messiah.
No, not at all.
You're pretty clear that's not right. Okay, and not John the Baptist. And you don't feel the need to be a street corner dancing preacher right now, this minute?
No, not at all. I don't think I could if I wanted to.
Okay, all right. And you've had DUIs?
I was a heavy drinker for a long time, but I was always just someone that drank at home. And I didn't have anywhere. I was living out of the car, so yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your lifestyle. We'll take a quick break. Ed spends most of his days now floating in the motel pool. We'll talk about his life post-mania when we come back.
The last time I saw my father, he tried to attack me.
Our parents have always helped Ed and helped him with his children.
They're raising one of your children?
When Ed would get really manic and religious, he would say that he is John the Baptist or the Messiah.
I was raised in a very religious family.
But one time he had me trapped on the chair for hours filming him. He baptized me with a bottle of water.
I was encouraged by youth leaders to get involved in ministry.
He came over and he was throwing water on me.
My goal at the age of 18 was to become a youth minister.
And I got up to get a towel, and he's cursing me, telling me to come sit back down.
I just felt very passionate about spreading the gospel.
What's your reaction to what Bill's saying there?
I mean, he's absolutely right. I was, when I would go on a diatribe or whatever, I just felt like, whatever I was saying was the most important thing in the world, and it was all a very goofy thing. We were laughing quite a bit that day, and as I'm talking, I baptized myself, and then but it was not an actual, meant to be a real religious experience. It was just talking and being goofy, but I did expect a lot of patience out of my sister and brother-in-law especially.
You've not seen your stepfather since March.
I already grieved the loss of my mother and stepfather.
Well, are you saying you've written him off? It's over, you've grieved it, he's gone?
I just feel like that relationship is over now.
Mm-hmm. Why is it over?
I just feel like there's no more to benefit from continuing. I mean, I was very hurt by their behavior, both their initial way that they treated me, and then the way that they basically had me arrested by saying that I was a danger to myself and others, and that was completely untrue. The last time I saw my father, he tried to attack me and then called the police on me, saying that I came there looking for a fight.
Would you agree that you've been erratic in your behavior and your emotions?
Yes.
You agree that you are dealing with a mental illness?
Yes.
You agree that your emotions have been labile and that your perceptions, what you're saying to yourself about the world, are suspect at times. Mm-hmm. Would that not cause you to believe that maybe that your perceptions of your interactions with others, any of these four here or others, might be something you would want to withhold judgment on until you knew you were completely straight and level?
I mean, it seems prudent, of course.
Our parents have always helped Ed, looked after him, went above and beyond to do things for him his entire life, and helped him with his children. And as a matter of fact, one of them is living with my folks. And so I don't think that my parents would intentionally turn their back on him. So I was concerned that he was throwing away this relationship based on this one thing, but what about the other 49 years?
This is a multi-sided, this is kind of like a mental, emotional, familial, relational Rubik's Cube. It's not quite as simple as they betrayed you, so you wrote them off, and that's it. And you're doing this while you're spinning around. You strike me as smarter than that. You strike me as smart enough to say, I might want to withhold final judgment on all this until I know somebody I trust is telling me, okay, you're looking at this clearly?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, just it hasn't been something that has been a priority for me. I know it's impacted the family. This is bigger than just myself.
They're raising one of your children?
They have, my son's living with them, yeah.
And this was the main reason I wrote into the show, was because I knew, first of all, I wanted Ed to get the help he needed, but I knew if something bad happened to Ed and I lost him, I would lose my grandparents as well, especially my grandmother, grieving the loss of her son. I couldn't see, I called my grandmother every day to check on her. I knew that she was so depressed, she just wanted to curl up in bed and die, and I couldn't lose two people.
I understand. Well, Ed's family says they believe that Ed's marijuana use has contributed to his mania. I think they all agree that alcohol contributes to his mania. So we got two substances, marijuana and alcohol, that seem to exacerbate his mania when he's in a manic state. But Ed says God wouldn't have created it if he didn't want people to use it. We'll talk about that when we come back. Your reasoning is God put marijuana on the earth.
God put cotton on this earth. He knew we would use it to make clothes.
Well, he also put poison ivy, rattlesnakes, and syphilis on this earth too, but we don't need to embrace all of that.
After surgery, I had some nerve damage. I started smoking medicinal marijuana to alleviate my symptoms. The real benefit that I got from the drug was it was transformative for me mentally.
Once my Uncle Ed started smoking medical marijuana, he left his old life behind and became this different person. He wanted to put the past behind him, all the negativity, all the sadness.
I do want my brother to stop doing weed. He feels like it's his medicine, but it's actually tearing him apart.
God put marijuana on this planet was that it's something that should be embraced and not shunned.
Your reasoning is God put marijuana on the earth, so it should be embraced.
Well, I mean, I think God put cotton on this earth. He knew we would use it to make clothes. He put opioids here to help people when they're experiencing extreme pain. But, you know, I know that.
Well, he also put poison ivy, rattlesnakes, and syphilis on this earth too, but we don't need to embrace all of that.
I think that there are a lot of people who would argue that there's a lot of benefits from cannabis medicinal.
Well, but not for everybody. The literature is very clear that if you have someone that is predisposed to a mental illness, either genetically or they have had bouts of it before, and they use marijuana, whether you put the word medicinal in front of it or not, they use marijuana, there is a very increased likelihood that it can trigger schizophrenia, all forms of psychosis, including bipolar, that it can absolutely trigger the onset of serious mental illness if they're predisposed to it. You do have a genetic predisposition, so you are at risk, much more so than the general population, for the occurrence of these mental illnesses. As a result, I don't think you can really know where you are until you get to a baseline by removing substances from your brain chemistry so we know what's really going on with you. You might eliminate those things from your world and all of a sudden go, oh my God, a hush has fallen over my world. I start to see things differently again. I can restart my relationship with my children. I can resume my career or start a new one. I don't see my parents as villains. I don't see a lot of things as threats. I can unravel the ball of yarn that is my economic hill to climb. A lot of things might start to look very differently to you. Ed says he has no plans to move back to Maryland, but his life in Nevada, living out of motels, is it really sustainable long term? I mean, is there a plan here, or does he need help with one? We'll talk about that next.
My uncle's situation has been devastating to my grandmother. She was one of the main reasons I wrote in because I saw her heart breaking. My grandmother was severely depressed. She wouldn't leave the house.
She's lost 20 pounds. She's crying all the time. She's finding it difficult to find joy in everyday life. My mother has always catered to my brother and babied him, and she is really grieving the loss of that relationship.
Ed, would you like to know what I think?
Sure.
First off, I wouldn't be making any life decisions right now because you are in a volatile situation. Emotionally, you've been up and down. Right now, you're down. I think you're telling yourself some things that I think are distorted. I think you're telling yourself some things about family that are distorted. But I'm not going to ask you to take my word for that. I'm just going to ask you to withhold judgment. You said taking marijuana, you refer to it as medicinal marijuana, as though it being medicinal changes the chemical properties of it, which it does not. It is what it is. It affects the neurotransmitters of your brain the way it does, whether you put the word medicinal in front of it or you don't. Marijuana is marijuana, and it does what it does. For some people, it can be helpful. For others, it can be really complicating of their situation. You said it increases your creativity. But I'm telling you, particularly in your case, in my professional opinion, they don't. I think they could be the trigger for a whole lot of this. A lot of this real onset was pursuant to your neck surgery. You woke up and your arm was paralyzed, right, and you had pain from this cervical surgery. As luck would have it, I've had that surgery, and I still don't have any feeling in a big part of this arm. I know how that works, and I didn't start medical marijuana, but you did, and I think it may well have triggered some things that were sleeping below the surface with you. And you went off of it for 2 weeks and things didn't get better, so you now say you're smoking 4 times a day. I think you could be really pouring gas on a fire. And then you put alcohol on top of that and you tell Bill, hey, I can go to dinner, I won't be manic, I'll be fine. And you're good 80% of the way through, but then you've had a drink or two and you want to dance with the waitress. So these substances aren't helping you. I want to know where you are DNA-wise and where you are biochemically in reaction to these substances. Now, to do that, you've never had a really thorough workup, and I think you should. And I think you deserve it. And I think that you should have a good DNA workup, and I think you should have your brain looked at to see how the neurotransmitters are being disrupted, either if they are consistent with bipolar and if they're being disrupted by these substances. Now, there's a group in the United States called the Amen Clinics. And they are a group of mental and physical health clinics that work on the treatment of mood and behavior disorders. And Dr. Daniel Amen is a really good friend of mine, and he has the largest database of brain scans in the world to compare all different kinds of disorders with that. And I will set you up at the Amen Clinic to have your brain scanned, non-invasively, by the way, to see what your brain is doing, to find out how it is reacting, see where you are neurotransmitter-wise. I will also arrange for a DNA test to be done, which is very, very simple, that will tell us if you do need medications, which ones they are, and if you are abreacting, having a bad reaction to the chemicals that you're getting in alcohol and marijuana. So we aren't shooting in the dark. We know what's going on. Wouldn't you want to know that? And when you are clear, bright-eyed, and seeing things without any distortion, if you still say this relationship is over, that's your discretion. You're a grown man. You make up your own decisions. But I would ask you to withhold judgment about those things. And these are things we can get done right away so you can know where you are. So I'm offering to help you, not judge you. I just want to give you this as a great starting point. And from that, a sustained treatment plan can be put together. I think you deserve some help, and I want to offer it to you.
Thank you.
What do you think about what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've always known there's been some things a little off about me, so it would be good to have a concise picture of what it is I'm struggling with.
Ed lives his life for everybody else. It's time Ed lives for himself and does everything to make him happy and well, because he does everything for everyone else. It's time to live your life for you.
Thank you.
I love you.
You deserve it. It's your time. It's your turn.
Yeah, it is.
Let us do this for you, and then you'll have the data you need to take the steps that you need to take. And I think you'll have the best shot at getting your life back where you want it to be.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. Appreciate it.
Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Coming up, we'll meet an inspiring young woman who seems to have it all, but looks can be deceiving. We'll hear her story next. When parents split up, many children end up shuttling back and forth between homes. It's an experience my next guest, Aisha, knows very well. Her parents lived in completely different environments, but she says that experience gave her the ability to adapt to almost any situation. Aisha says it also pushed her to excel in her education and career. However, there's one area of her life that remains a serious challenge.
Just give me a couple hours and I will finalize that website. I've been working in the technology industry as a web designer and developer. I am a woman of color who pursued STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's something that I take pride in. I love that I work in a field that makes a difference, but sometimes I do feel very uncomfortable taking these calls with my colleagues because my skin issues are very severe and affecting my confidence. What bothers me most about my skin is the hyperpigmentation, meaning when I get pimples, they scar, leaving these dark spots. Why can't I be, 100% beautiful? When I look in the mirror and it's on my cheeks, my forehead, my skin feels dull. There's no type of glow and can also be very dry at times. To deal with my hyperpigmentation, I use foundation every second of the day. I am trying different topicals, pills, and nothing has worked. Very frustrating. If I can get these dark marks off my face, I can go back to being my happy, confident, sexy self.
Well, joining me are Aisha and Elaine Swan, lifestyle expert and spokesperson for Olay. So thank you both for being here. So, Aisha, at only 25, your drive and ambition are really inspiring, but it sounds like your childhood was a challenge. So tell me about that.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult at times. My parents lived apart, and while I loved them both, I was constantly back and forth. My mom lived in the inner city, and in that environment, you don't really see a lot of people going to college or being successful. On the other hand, you have my father who lived in the suburbs and really knew the importance of having a great education. And he's actually a big part of why I am in STEM today.
Well, I'm sure both of your parents have got to be really proud of you, and you should be proud of yourself. Are you?
Absolutely. I really take pride in being a Black woman in STEM, being in the technology space, but unfortunately there is an area of my life that I'm not as confident in and proud of, and that's, my skin. I've been suffering from skin issues since I was 14. It's dull, dry, and I've been, having these hyperpigmentation spots, which are just dark marks, right? So I don't feel as confident, I don't feel as sexy, and it's something I feel I wish I didn't feel, if that makes sense. But people look at you and they see your face, so it's something that I'm just very self-conscious about.
Our body image our self-image vary together, and they shouldn't. I mean, we're not a better person if we look better than if we don't, or if our weight's the way we want it to be, or it isn't. We're the same person inside, but to us, we're not. And if our confidence is shaken, then that causes us to feel different about ourselves. We present differently. So it really has an impact. So we have to take care of ourselves on the inside and the outside at the same time. So Elaine, what advice would you have for Aisha?
Well, first, Aisha, I want to start off by saying it is so great to see a young woman in STEM because women are still not as represented in the tech world right now. So we love that for you.
That's really true.
Absolutely. Now, for your confidence, I have some things that I believe can be of great help for you, all right? As Dr. Phil said, our confidence does definitely start from the inside, but there are a few things that you can do outwardly to help build that self-confidence.
So what specifically would you recommend for her?
Well, I have 2 products to recommend for you, Aisha. You say that your skin looks dull and uneven, and for that, I really like Olay's Vitamin C Moisturizer. Now, the brand says when you use it twice a day for 28 days, your skin will appear 2 times brighter than a basic moisturizer. Okay, so that's a good thing. Now, here's the thing that's really, really great. I love this because what's really cool is when you put it on, it doesn't leave a greasy residue on your skin. But when studied on 22 women, they found after 24 hours, this offered better hydration than a $400 cream. Okay,
That's
so
amazing.
you're gonna save some money there.
Okay, a lot of money.
You said you had 2 recommendations.
I do, and it's all about hydration. And the other product I like for Aisha is Olay's Retinol 24 Night Moisturizer. It renews your skin so it looks and feels smoother and hydrated.
So what do you think?
I'm excited to try these new products. I feel like I've been just wearing makeup and foundation for so long, so having something to actually, take that away is an amazing feeling.
Well,
so,
that's good. That's
super
good.
excited.
Okay, well, thankfully, you can get both of these products at Olay.com and at retailers nationwide, all right? But don't go shopping yet.
Okay.
Because we're giving you a year's supply.
There you go. And guess what? Everyone in our studio audience and virtual audience will receive a gift from Olay as well. So, I want to thank all of my guests today, and a special thanks to Elaine Swan and to Olay. If you'd like to join us here in the